Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment in a probably ongoing series of TED Excellence. Today, we're going to have a double feature because the TEDx talk that I found is relatively short, clocking in at just about 8 minutes. So I have a supplementary undercard today. It's a familiar face to those of you that may have seen some of my older videos, but we'll get into that momentarily. First, want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, everyone in the chat. There, I did it. Hope you guys are having a good Saturday morning, such as it is, all things considered. Say hello to those of you that made it despite YouTube's active intention to suppress our streams for some reason. I don't know if this is happening to other creators, but Satsu, Monkey, and myself at least, notifications of our videos and or streams have apparently just gone by the wayside recently. So hello, Gulf City Cult of Krill, No One Nowhere, Adabisi, Attack Alpaca, TA, Mike Downey, Asian Hippie, Quinn the Cultist, Stargazer Nuts, Chicago Mike, John Smith, Roasted Opinions, Mike Savage, Hearse Gravegear. Hello, everyone. Morning or afternoon. That's true. You guys are all in different parts of the world. Hello, all you need. All right. So this first little undercard bit, this comes from a channel that I've done at least one video on before, where our main presenter here was telling us that, was asking the question, or answering the question, I think it was, can people of color be racist? And her answer to that question was memorable, to say the least. But this is from a channel called Diverse City, 2 words, but of course, if you run them together, it's very clever. And this video is called Bias, the Interview Process. Now, as many of you may know, I have done more than a few videos on diversity hiring and diversity in the workplace and ERGs and initiatives therein. Rare is it that I get to see something of an example of what an actual interview process, keeping diversity in mind, would look like. Now, I haven't watched this video, save for a couple of little snippets here and there. So I don't know where this is going to go. It's a mystery to you as much as it is to me. But maybe we'll get somebody's perspective who's very, very into this stuff on what they think the proper approach for a diverse job interview looks like. Because I imagine whatever we're presented with here is in the minds, if not in the actual actions, of those who also profess this particular perspective in the corporate world. Sinatra says, hello. Hey, you got the notification, he says. Well, good. Maybe they fixed it. I guess we'll find out. Eric Bonilla, hello. Tattoo Steven, hello. Somnambulation, hello. I'm always going to screw that up. I'm just decided I'm just going to, that's the running gag now. I'm just going to screw up that name. You can feel special. All right, so as usual, now I should warn, this video starts very abruptly. I had to cut off the opening theme song because I don't know if it's copyrighted or not. So it starts very abruptly. I'll let it run for a couple of seconds just to get a verification from you guys that the sound is working. So as soon as I hit play, it's going to immediately start, okay? I think she immediately starts talking as soon as I hit play. All right, so with all that being said, let's go.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Season 4 of our Learning Series. I'm Dr. C.I., the CEO of Diverse City, and I'm back in the building kicking off Season 4 of our Learning Series.
Okay, you guys hear that? She's kicking off Season 4 of her Learning Series. Everybody hear that? Let me know, let me know. Sounds okay, says Chicago Mike. I will take Chicago Mike's word for it. Sounds fine, says some nation. All right, let's proceed.
This year, we changed it up for y'all and decided to bring some scenario-based learning to the table. We're going to show you skits based on issues that surround diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and give you solutions in order to address discrimination in the moment.
All right. I am ready. I am ready to be educated. I want to know how to address discrimination in the moment. I want to see some educational skits about the workplace. Oh, boy.
So without further ado, let's get into it. This room look familiar to y'all?
I don't know. Is my principal's office?
It's the interview room where candidates go to explain why they are the best person for the job, and many panels practice biases in the selection process. You might be asking, how does bias show up in an interview process?
Well, how does bias show up in an interview process? The employer is looking for someone with the necessary qualifications, a attitude that is commensurate to the workplace in which they are trying to apply to, and seems to know what they're talking about outside of just what's on their resume. That kind of bias, merit-based bias.
Well, pay attention to the skit.
I thought Jamal was a decent candidate. I mean, he certainly has all the qualifications, as does Jim. But there's something about the qualities that Jim has that I think make him more of a culture fit.
Oh my. Jim versus Jamal. More of a culture fit. Okay. I'm curious to find out if they do a reverse skit of what should be done and see how that plays out, because what I'm seeing in every other panel discussion or video, corporate or otherwise, that talks about this stuff, they couch their language in similar terms, except nearing towards saying, we need to find a multitude of voices or a variety of perspectives, rather than talking about culture fit.
You know what I mean?
First of all, bias number one is that companies should be focusing on cultural addition versus cultural fit.
Cultural addition versus cultural fit. Well, first off, you're assuming from the example that her cultural fit comment is a couched version of Jim is white and Jamal's black, and Jim will fit in here better because he's white. Okay. If the culture of your company is X and someone comes in with an attitude of Y, is that an inherent benefit or is that a disruption? And I'm not talking about aesthetics. These guys are talking about aesthetics. I'm talking about actual attitude, experience, etc. And you can't always tell that from the first interview or even the second interview. Some people will surprise you after they've been with your company for a while. But anyway.
Cultural fit requires you to fit people into a culture, like a box, when you instead should be adding diversity in order to expand inclusion in your culture.
Okay, but how do you define diversity? I mean, the implication is your speaker in the skit was delineating Jim and Jamal simply on the basis of race. I mean, you made that explicitly clear in the photos you were showing and the names you chose for these characters. So enhancing your culture is just a matter of hiring people who aren't Jim? Is that what I am to understand?
Carry on.
I can't really see myself going out to a bar or having a beer with Jamal after work.
The candidate is here to do a job, not be your damn drinking buddy, George.
Yes. Do people actually talk like that in interviews? I'll be honest. I've never been in a high-level management position where I've had to hire people. And I guess it depends on the workplace and exactly what's going on. But if somebody actually said that, is that a consideration that people doing hiring make? Would I go out to a bar to have a drink with this person? I don't know. Is that a stereotype or is that something that actually takes place?
Get it together.
Well, it sounds like both candidates are qualified, but we know who we want. I'll call Jim tomorrow and offer him the role. Good job, team.
Wonderful.
So they're both equally qualified, but the guy at the end of the table is obviously choosing Jim because he's white. I mean, taking the scenario on face value, there is no other differential between the two, conceivably, except that one's black and one's white. So we're assuming that people in the interview process act and think like this. Even though none of the example skit people actually said anything about race, we're going to assume their comments are racially biased. That's what I'm getting from this.
Do you recognize the biases that are happening here? Affinity bias shows that people are more likely to select candidates that look like them and that they have things in common with. This is why you need visible and invisible diverse interview selection panels. Let's take a glimpse at what that means.
I thought Jamal was a decent candidate. He had all the qualifications, as did Jim, but I don't know. There's something about the qualities that Jim has that makes him seem like more of a good culture fit.
Oh no! Oh, look at the looks on their faces. Did he just say culture fit? Oh, look how grim. How grim. Oh boy. Let's see what they say.
Wait, hold up a second. What part of our culture is it that Jamal doesn't fit into?
Oh. Yeah, explain yourself, white man. What do you mean he doesn't fit into the culture? Tell us, white man.
I mean, our values are diversity, inclusion, kindness, knowledge, and respect, right? Both candidates exhibited those.
So then why is Jim a worse fit than Jamal? Why are you jumping on this guy because he happens to favor one over the other? I mean, either you're looking at them equally or you're not.
Right, but which candidate would you more likely want to go out with after work and have a beer?
Yeah, that's how people actually talk. Maybe there's some idiots out there that do. I don't know. But okay, sure.
Well, I prefer to judge a candidate on which candidate would be more likely to help me complete a project. We shouldn't be judging candidates on our social expectations. That's not fair.
Yeah, so fine. So Jim is just as qualified a candidate as Jamal. So setting aside this one guy's goofiness, why should Jim be rejected?
How about this? Both candidates seem really qualified. How about we bring them both back in for a final interview, give them an assessment, and decide based on competence level?
I can't argue with that one. Just on its face, that would be what you would think would be the standard. Judging people on competence. I wonder how many people actually make their decisions in conversations like this. Josh, can I have a beer with this guy? They're more of a culture fit. I mean, culture fit sounds like such corporate speak to begin with, but anyway.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I do. I like that idea. Hi, I'm Whitey McWhiterson over here.
There it is.
Me too.
Do you see the difference in each panel? By bringing underrepresented employees into your interview process, it shows that you're committed to different points of view and opinions.
Whoa, wait a second. That's the lesson? The lesson isn't the procedure by which you are winnowing down your candidate pool. The lesson is the kinds of people you have in the room. Let me jet back a second here to example number 1. I mean, and you'll forgive me if I'm being superficial here, but then I don't really have a choice in the matter. Each of those people are distinctly diverse from one another. So how is this grouping somehow lesser than the other grouping, save for the fact that this group acted, implicitly biased, and the other group, 2/3 of it didn't, I guess? Anyway.
Do you see the difference in each panel? By bringing underrepresented employees into your interview process, it shows that you're committed to different points of view and opinions. It helps to minimize bias in your selection process and give candidates a fair chance.
Because, quote unquote, diverse employees do not possess any biases? How is that exactly?
You should be asking all the candidates the same questions and conducting structured interviews based on technical competencies that align with the job role. Bringing in people from different backgrounds shows your commitment to diversity and inclusion and can increase your company's diversity.
Wait a sec. You should be looking for employees based on competence, etc., but you need to bring in people for the interview process who possess, quote unquote, different perspectives and are diverse. So in one instance, you're looking for merit, but in the other instance, the aesthetics are what's important. Because and I've heard this several times now, depending on what your skin color is, you have a certain quality of thinking as compared to other skin colors. All right? That's what I'm constantly being fed. If you have a room full of people who aesthetically all, quote unquote, look the same, you therefore have a homogenized viewpoint, a unified perspective. The only way you find diversity of thought is because it is attached to diversity of melanin count. So I'm told.
Make sure to post in the comments and tell us about a time where you experienced something similar. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share our videos because your support really means a lot to us. Until we meet again, I'm Dr. CI, and I'll see y'all next time. Stay blessed and safe out here.
Okay. Like I said, a short one. A short little snippet. All right. So we have a cartoonishly, implicitly racist white guy in the interview group. And the only reason that the second instance was better was because diverse employees were brought in on the decision-making process. Of course, one has to wonder, then why was weird, goofy guy there in the first place? He's the jokester, he's acting all casual and everything, but everybody else is serious and firm and professional. Yes. Yes. And so I have to wonder, with all that we were just told there, now, did anything explicitly say we have to choose someone on the basis of race? Well, the only people who were accused of having that way of thinking were the not black people. That their culture fit, and would you want to have a beer with this person? And I think we know who we want to pick. That meant that they were racist against black people and racist towards white people. So how is that an improvement when you reverse the whole thing and say that you need to populate your decision-making process with people because of what they look like? Seems a bit odd to me. I was getting some mixed messages there. But okay, there you go, guys. That's our first undercard instance. I didn't know what we were going to have there, but there you have it. I'll check the chat real quick to see what people had to say. And hello, Amanda Wolfchild. Amada, I should say. Asian Hippie, there were jobs I wanted and I took them, but I didn't feel good at a BC. Oh, I missed something. Let me scroll up a bit. Asian Hippie, I've also had jobs where I wasn't the most qualified, but I got them because of my skin color. It's deflating when I found out. Adabisi says, I would be pissed. They better pay me enough to not complain, LOL. Chicago Mike says, diversity is not having one person making the decision. That would be so, you would think. Or take people from different departments who have different perspectives on the work of the company. Sure. Different perspectives on being a different race. What does that have to do with the company? I guess it depends on the company, what their product or service is. But, if you bring somebody in from the marketing department, you bring somebody in from the filing department, you bring somebody in from the sales department, the three of them look at this person for whatever their qualifications are. They're coming from different perspectives of the company, of the business, and give their insights as to whether this person seems to exemplify those things necessary to fit in with the culture, whatever that means, or at least be able to do the job. That would make sense. But that would be merit-based. That wouldn't be based simply on what you look like. Kay Shull, hello. That one servant of Satania who wishes Minilad one, hello. Functional, hello. Did I miss anybody else in the meantime? If I did, I will do some hellos later. All right, and so that was our undercard. A little snippet from an old familiar face from a previous video I did. But now, unless there's anything else to discuss. Oh, Pinkala the Driving Ape Man, hello. No need to apologize. It's okay. Being late is not a crime, especially with the way YouTube is treating things lately. The main event. See, I planned it this way, you see, because I figured with YouTube kind of being late to the game on telling people where stuff was or sharing the tweet or that kind of thing, having an undercard before we get to the main event might give people time to show up and enjoy the meat of the matter. So we're going to move on to the wonderful world of TEDx. And the title of this presentation is what caught my mind. Also, I got to admit, the haircut of the speaker caught my attention. But this presentation is called The Radical Authenticity Revolution. Now, again, for those of you who've watched my channel for some time, you'll know that one of my favorite buzzwords is authenticity. Bringing your authentic self to work, bringing your whole self to work in various ways. It's a very, very interesting word, given what people tend to define it as. In my experience, watching so many of these presentations and these promotions and such. Now, first I should predicate, I don't know in which direction this guy is going to take the concept of authenticity. It could be completely, diagonal to whatever I'm about to say. But when I hear authenticity, and I hear it used in a context of work or, mainly work or corporate philosophy, authenticity is an encouragement that you break down the barrier of your personal life and your work life. When someone says, we want you to bring your whole self to work, that is an indicator from everything that I've seen that they want to entwine your life with your job in such a way that you are always on the job. You are always promoting the company. Aspects of your life which have nothing to do with your work, your gender, conceivably have nothing to do with your work, depending on the company, obviously. Your gender, your race, your sexual orientation, your ethnicity, your personal culture, your family history, that kind of stuff. They want to try to intertwine that into the workplace. They want you to feel free to open up about everything so that your workplace is a family. Your workplace is essentially one giant support group. They want to break down the notion of professional distance in order that you're always on the clock. This is what I believe to be the relatively insidious function of ERGs, or employee resource groups. You start these many little subcultures based around very specific aspects of people's lives, and you entwine them into the company's goals while supposedly and on the surface serving, I don't know, as a support group or a resource group, as they call them. Okay, well, I've gone on long enough about that. That's what I think of when I hear authenticity. So let's find out what our speaker at TEDx has to say about authenticity in just under 8 minutes. Ooh, he's a PhD. Oh boy, you know what that means. You have absolutely no idea what that means. You could have a PhD in underwater basket weaving, or a PhD in philosophy, or a PhD in sociology, or who knows. But hey, he's a PhD, so he went to school for a long time, guys.
Do you remember your high school yearbook photo?
Yes. That was easy.
Think back to it.
Okay. I'm thinking back to it now.
Envision it. What do you notice?
It is a goofier, younger version of myself now. And myself now is far more handsome and seasoned. That's what I tell myself.
Was your hair not quite right?
Well, you're one to be talking about hair not quite right, because man, it takes a lot of courage to sport a faux hawk such as that, I gotta say.
Or did you just get a fresh cut that day? Do you recognize the image staring back at you?
Do you always talk like this? Sort of soft and soothing, almost like you're trying to be a hypnotist of some kind, to lull me into a false sense of security and comfort until you break out with the really hard facts. Sorry about that.
Now, I want to tell you about a 17-year-old named Danny. When he was starting to go through puberty, he looked into the mirror and he didn't recognize what he saw.
That sounds like a mental problem. Does Danny have, I don't even know what that would be. Like some kind of dysmorphia of some kind? Also, I had to stop myself from singing "Oh, Danny Boy" there for a second, just because, I don't know.
He would turn to the side and he would see breasts and he would press them down.
Okay, so Danny has gender dysphoria. As far as I'm guessing, but okay.
That's not me in the mirror, he thought to himself. Sophomore year of high school, he cut his hair really short and he looked into the mirror and he smiled. That's when it felt right.
You are creepy, dude. You are creepy. Okay, so jumping ahead here, or trying to. Again, I haven't watched this. Okay, so Danny, for the sake of argument until we're told otherwise, Danny is actually a Danielle, and Danielle believes or feels more comfortable with the notion of being male than female. That's what I'm getting from this.
Now, at age 17, Danny uses male pronouns and often feels like a boy, but not always. One thing he knows is that he never feels like a girl, the sex he was assigned at birth.
You are not assigned a sex at birth. I can't count how many times I've said that either on videos or other things. You are a particular sex at birth. You're either male or female. Anything that might confuse that issue is a very unfortunate birth defect. But you are not assigned a sex. You either have a penis or you have a vagina. That's it. And the more that notion is promoted, that it's some kind of arbitrary decision on the part of the doctor, that you are the victim of someone else's will upon your identity, it's just, well, not only is it incorrect, but it's stupid.
Danny identifies as gender non-binary.
Danny can identify as whatever Danny wants to identify. Gender non-binary is not a thing. You're either male or female. How you feel about your sexuality is entirely up to you, but it is amorphous. It is not tangible. It is an emotion or a perception. In reality, you are either male or female. Everything else is just how you interact with people socially.
He's attracted to boys, calls himself gay. The labels don't necessarily work great for Danny, but he's getting by. He's learning about new ones every day, especially online.
Right. And the best place to go for medical advice or mental health advice is online. I hope our speaker will at least concede that that is not the healthiest avenue to find out information about what might be going on with you mentally or biologically.
He's learning about labels like pansexual, attracted to people regardless of their gender identity or biological sex. He's learning about labels like asexual, experiencing little to no sexual desire. He's learning about labels like polyamorous, open to multiple relationships simultaneously.
Oh my God, yes, there are lots and lots of words and concepts out there. Learning about them, even if they don't make any sense, even if there's no actual scientific evidence for it, even if it's just, and I'm going to, I know I'm being judgmental here, but I've come across it lots and lots in my life. Even if they are technical sounding terms that end up just being rationalizations for not wanting to commit to a relationship. And nobody's required to commit to a relationship, don't get me wrong, but either just say you're not a committed person or wrap yourself in some technical term to make it seem like you're special, because that's where we go to be special, don't we? The internet. I say this as I'm live streaming on YouTube.
Now, Danny doesn't live in Santa Cruz, and he doesn't live in San Francisco or Chicago or some other place known for being supportive, if not progressive, when it comes to gender and sexual diversity. No, Danny lives in a small town in California's Central Valley.
Not the Central Valley! Oh God, what a hellscape!
And his friends don't necessarily get it. They say, if you were born a girl and you like guys, doesn't that basically make you straight?
Yes. Biologically speaking, yes.
No way, says Danny. Danny is part of a new generation, leading a revolution in how we think about gender and sexuality. Young people are using entirely new and expansive vocabulary to describe their gender and sexual desire.
Yes, that is true. But they're also making up a whole bunch of nonsensical definitions of things in order to be special. Or in order to explain feelings and emotions and things they don't really have words for otherwise. Or to fit in. Or to feel superior. Or to have a position above other people. Or a place from which to victimize themselves. Let's not pretend that every instance of someone trying to define themselves is entirely altruistic, is entirely legitimate, that there's not some selfishness there, that there's not a power struggle going on there. And looking for terms and ways in which to describe your biology or your mentality outside of professional therapy or professional analysis, you might as well be cosplaying something. I mean, I can go on the internet and look up a whole bunch of stuff on WebMD, and I can pretend that I'm a medical expert. But that's all I'd be doing. I'd be pretending.
We scientists are playing catch up.
Oh, you're a scientist? I really want to know what your PhD is in. I really do.
When I started a project 5 years ago to study the lives of today's queer teenagers, I thought I had a clue. I'm a 43-year-old gay guy. I came out when I was 17, and I've basically been immersed in queer communities my entire life.
Okay, so maybe you have a skewed viewpoint? Maybe? I mean, we're just talking about biases. Just wondering. But of course, if you did this study and you were surprised by stuff, I guess you didn't know as much as you thought you did. Or maybe your way of dealing with your life isn't necessarily the same way as everybody else, which goes for most people. Also, the more I look at your hair, I'm sorry, it just looks silly.
But I didn't know what I was in for. You see, I was a child of the 1980s, a teenager of the 1990s, the product of 20th century binary thinking.
Well, I was all those things too. I mean, I was a child in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s. And here I am in the 21st century, an adult of the aughts, I guess. And, well, no, it's not the aughts anymore, is it? No, we're in the 10s and the 20s again. Oh, boy, time flies. Regardless, I still understand there are two genders, male and female, pansexual, asexual, however you want to define bisexual or, asexual. I mean, there's all these variants like, oh, I am attracted to everybody. Okay, you're bisexual because there's two genders. Now, you're attracted to men, you're attracted to women. The end. Pansexual, what does that even mean? Doesn't mean anything. Because even if you're bisexual, you have elements that you're attracted to and not. Like, maybe you're bisexual and you like tall women and short men. Maybe for whatever reason, that's what clicks your trigger, as it were. If you're pansexual, you have no filters at all? Is that... I've always wondered what pansexual is supposed to mean in relation to, or as opposed to, bisexual. I'm dwelling on that because it's like we live in the 20th century gender binary. No, we will always live in the gender binary. Sorry, as much as you might want it to be otherwise. Besides which, if we're not living in the gender binary, why are you only attracted to men?
The product of a pre-digital age. The young people I've worked with were born at the start of this century. They grew up with the marriage equality movement. They had a front row seat to the winds of change.
And great. I was all for that growing up. I always, the Defense of Marriage Act and all that stuff. Treat people as people. Treat people equally. Abide by the tenets and the spirit of the Constitution, etc. And I'm glad all that happened. But that does not change biological reality.
As public opinion flipped to support marriage equality by the time they were in high school, and marriage equality became the law of the land, they saw transgender visibility rise dramatically.
Yeah, didn't we though? And what does that have to do with anything? Because if you're transitioning genders, you're moving from one to the other because there are two.
And with that, a new vocabulary emerged. Google started to see huge spikes in searches for the word cisgender, which describes those whose gender identity matches their sex assigned at birth.
Just interpret that as you will.
And something else happened at the beginning of this century that made the childhoods of young people like Danny very unusual. Danny was 11 when Instagram was launched.
Oh, dear God. Was he? Was he 11 when Instagram was launched? I have a feeling this is going to feed into what I was talking about earlier, how these days you have to be special. You have to make it known how special you are. You have to seek approval and affirmation and sympathy. And oftentimes, I believe this to be true, you have to seek antagonism through online social media. Because to be antagonized is to become a victim, is to make yourself a soldier in some kind of war against something bad. It's kind of a catch-all benefit, right? You're seeking acceptance, certainly. You're seeking support and affirmation, and also seeking attention. But you're also seeking conflict, I think. Subconsciously, if not consciously. Some people are more conscious about it, obviously.
He was only 8 at the birth of Twitter and Tumblr.
Oh no, Twitter and Tumblr, here we go. Social media.
Danny and his friends grew up on social media. They're the first generation to know no limits when it comes to access to information and possibilities for human connection.
Yeah, but let's be honest. In the majority, the human connection, quote unquote, that you get from social media is of the most superficial kind. A tweet, a like, a silly comment. I could go on longer about that, but let's move on.
Danny's story is a 21st century story. The 21st century is the era of radical authenticity. It's a time of alignment between our inner experience of gender and sexuality and our external expression of it.
Okay. If there was no social media, Danny would be going through the exact same struggles. All right. Now let's pretend for a moment that all of the legal and social advancements that have taken place were still in place, but there was no social media. Danny would still be going through the same struggles. Struggles of identity, struggles of orientation, attraction, and so on. Social media does not change that, nor does it change the biological reality of two genders, nor does it somehow allow for the concept of assigned at birth. Social media is a way to express oneself, certainly. The internet is a way to find out lots of information, even if it is not true, to help either support or denigrate your perspective on the world, even if your perspective on the world is ill-informed. So I'm curious to know what his argument is that somehow social media has a bigger impact on what Danny would be going through otherwise. I mean, aside from the connectivity, I will grant you that. The internet and social media has certainly allowed people who have niche interests or unique situations to find other people who have those same niche interests or unique situations. So you don't feel as alone. I think that is one of the actual benefits of the internet age. You know, there is a connectivity when you're a lonely island, no pun intended to the band, but I couldn't think of a better phrase, to find a larger continent for yourself. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. But as with all such benefits, there be dragons out there.
It's a time of revolution and possibilities for authentic self-expression.
Authentic self-expression. So in the absence of social media, Danny couldn't be open and honest about how they feel or their perspective on the world. Why is the internet, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, how do those create authenticity? Now, again, I'm asking these questions rhetorically. I don't know where he's going with this, so I might never get answers from our speaker, but that's where my mind is going.
It's a time of revolution, but it's not affecting everyone equally. Some are being left behind.
Like?
A pattern emerged in my research with queer teenagers. It turns out the vast majority of young people who feel emboldened to be radically authentic in their gender and sexuality have been, like Danny, assigned female at birth.
I'm not going to say it again.
What's going on with boys? Well, it turns out some things have changed from when I was in high school in the 1990s, and some things haven't. The boys in my study, they talked about the pressures to be one of the guys, to be tough, to be athletic, to be straight.
Yes, those pressures don't exist amongst straight males either, by the way. Those pressures to be athletic, to be strong, to show off your machismo, to brag about the girls you've bedded. That doesn't take place amongst straight boys either, I guess. Are we just going for a general toxic masculinity riff here?
They talked about fearing violence if they were seen as too feminine. They talked about name calling.
Not name calling amongst kids and teenagers. Oh my God.
Listening to boys, I realized the revolution isn't over, it's underway. Authenticity is constrained by the legacies of gender and sexuality that we inherit. Young people are not starting from scratch. They are working from templates.
Yeah, except for all that instinctual stuff, which I guess you could say is a genetic template or a lizard brain template, especially when you take babies who have no socialization and you study their reactions by gender to different situations and different objects and things. And you see recurrent patterns where boys generally take an interest in mechanical things and girls generally take an interest in aesthetic things. And these are not templates they're operating off of because they're babies. So, Mr. PhD, are you going to acknowledge the possibility that a lot of what we see as gender roles comes in large part from nature rather than nurture? Maybe.
And it turns out the template for boys just hasn't gone through a complete redesign.
Why should it? And why just boys? Are girls and the female template simply absolute perfection? I mean, Danny started out as a girl and felt as though he was a he and not a she. So was Danny incorrect in his interpretation of himself? If the template for boys is inherently flawed, as you say?
Yet. Our ability to practice authenticity is tangled up in understandings of gender and sexuality from the past, but that isn't stopping young people from doing it.
Practicing authenticity. I did a video previously on someone who is a business consultant and a life coach kind of thing, and they talked about practicing authenticity. I called it authentology because the way she was speaking about it came across like a religion. And this guy is dipping his toes into a similar mindset.
The stories of young people like Danny give me hope. But guess what? This revolution is not just for young people like Danny. It's for all of us.
Yes, because we are all complicit. We are all responsible. Yes, all of us. Join us.
Across the life course, more people are finding the words to describe their gender and sexuality authentically.
Because before this, they were describing their gender and sexuality disingenuously. They weren't being honest, guys. You're not being honest, audience. You're not being honest with yourselves, let alone me. You need to be honest with how you perceive yourself. You need to join in on my perspective of a fractured notion of biology and a scattered sense of what sexuality is. Otherwise, you're not being authentic. You're actually being dishonest. You see the trap there? It's almost right up there with I'm here to teach empathy. All right, you've already framed the virtue of your argument before the other person can even respond. And anything they say to the contrary of what you have to say is, well, a callous, or in this case, dishonest.
They're coming out as transgender in their 90s, asexual in their 50s, kinky and polyamorous in their 40s. The revolution is trickling up.
I don't know what to tell you. I was knowably kinky since I was 19. And so have been tons and tons and tons and tons of other people. This is not a new thing. It is more well-known and widespread in revelation because of the internet, but this is not a new thing. You are not an archaeologist discovering some secret. You're not on the cutting edge of anything. but you think you are.
Young people like Danny are leading the revolution, but we're all a part of it.
Okay, the whispering stuff is really freaking creepy. I'm sorry. It just, hey, everybody, I just want you to know that you're all part of the revolution. You, me, the tree, the rock, the force. We're all part of it.
We're all participating in the movement away from binary thinking, opening up the space for radical authenticity.
Radical authenticity. Is that authenticity with like neon colors and skateboards and knee pads and sunglasses? Is that authenticity by TNC Surf Design? Is that the kind of authenticity we're talking about? Or are you trying to project and force upon other people a notion that to think outside the biological binary is a good thing, and to think about the reality of science and gender is evil? Maybe. Thank you, Chicago Mike. William Shatner School of Public Speaking. No. You see, if it was William Shatner School of Public Speaking, he'd be like, I need to tell you about the deterioration of the gender binary. It is a revolution, and you can join us. That would be more William Shatner School. This is more, I'm not quite sure what this is. This is more like creepy school counselor or something.
When I think back to my high school portrait, I'm not sure I actually recognize what I see. The smile hides so much of what I know I was feeling at the time.
Well, I will say the guy has definitely transformed since his high school days. I would not, you know how you see a younger version of someone and you can see sort of looking between the two, the natural progression of facial features and things to that point. I gotta say, at least at first blush, he has dramatically changed since his high school yearbook photo. That is impressive in and of itself.
But I never could have imagined the optimism I would now feel, privileged to hear the stories of young people like Danny, feeling liberated to express my own brand of authenticity, liberated from the constraints of another time, living in the era of radical authenticity. Thank you.
Okay, that was abrupt. But then I guess it was all that it was. So that last sentiment there, I will agree with him. I am glad, socially speaking, American culture and law speaking, I'm screwing up my grammar there, but sue me, to be living in the time that I am. To see the near complete legalization, or at least softening of marijuana use, for example, and the abolishment of prohibitions against same-sex marriage. I mean, more equality, more people having the freedom to choose for themselves how they want to live their lives, within the law and respecting other people's civil rights, doing away with inequality. I like that I live in a time where that is the case, despite the things that I see these days that are hearkening back to the dark ages of such notions. But I always have hope because I've seen the change happen in my own lifetime. But what he's offering here is trying to impose a perspective onto people and a giant guilt trip onto so many that to believe elsewise from his perspective is not authentic. It's not honest. It's detrimental, etc. That anything anybody comes up to me and says is true about them or their mentality or reality or anything else, I must accept. Otherwise, I've got antiquated thinking, or I'm being oppressive, or I'm being discriminatory. Someone comes up to me and says, you know, you don't have to adhere to the gender you were assigned at birth. And I say, gender isn't assigned at birth. It either is one or it is the other, and that's just reality. If I'm then accused of being somehow discriminatory or homophobic or transphobic or something, they're not in the right because they're offended. They're trying to change me because they need more people to agree with them. Now, I have to respect their opinion and their perspective on how they feel about themselves, which, you know, is fine. If you feel a certain way about yourself, it's sort of like, it's like religion after a fashion, or it's like about any belief system, or like, let me take something even less, more innocuous, I should say, more innocuous. In my pocket, I have, and I'm pulling it out right now just for reasons that don't make any sense since I'm basically on the radio. I have a little, well, I guess you'd call it a little bag. It's like one of those little bags you get like a ring in, a little jeweler's bag, a little gunny sack kind of thing. And inside this is a little charm that a friend of mine many, many, many years ago made for me. And this friend of mine is, because she's still around, a witch. She's a practicing Wiccan. Now, from her perspective, she put this little charm together for me. It's a good luck charm. It's supposed to bring me good fortune. And I don't know what's in it. I never opened it up. She said, never open it. It was a little orange wrapped up little thing and had various stuff inside, I guess. And the little orange cloth started to break down over time. So I put it all inside a little gunny sack that's far more durable. And I keep it in my pocket. And I take it with me wherever I go. Now, it's an innocuous superstition, right? Do I believe that it brings me good luck? Well, no. But also, there's no harm in thinking that maybe it does, right? And if I explain this to someone, as I'm explaining it to you, you might say, oh, well, that's cute, right? It doesn't do you any harm. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't have anything to do with your life. It's just my little thing. It's just for me. I can explain it. I don't feel ashamed about it. There you go. A lot of us have things like that, whether they're superstitions or perspectives on the world or how we interpret things, and that's fine. You know, it does you no harm. It does no one else any harm. That's fine. But if I were to march up to you with my little luck charm and I pushed it in your face and said, if you don't believe in this luck charm the way I do, you're a bad person. If you do not believe that the invisible force that I know is inhabiting this gunny sack and guiding the luck in my life, if you do not believe in it as well, then you are morally deficient as a person. Because the little area of my existence that extends about, a foot away from my body at any given point in the day that I control through my mind powers, if that is not extended upon to you, if you do not accept that, you're bad. You're wrong. Even in the absence of any physical evidence to prove what I'm saying, you're wrong. Now, that is not a new concept. But what our speaker just did is a continuation of that same kind of concept, holding moral judgment over someone because they do not agree with your outlook on life. He might be using terms like gender binary and pansexual and all that kind of thing, whatever. It's individual interpretation of reality. It's how you've decided to define yourself or how you've decided to accept how things are for other people and join in on this, mental jamboree. Now, he might not be doing anybody any effective harm, right? He might mean well. In fact, I think he does. I don't have any reason to believe otherwise. But when you start down the path of telling people that they're wrong for relying on observable reality, you're getting into religion and you're getting into sort of, orthodoxy and inquisition territory, social or otherwise. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me about our speaker and people like our speaker. But I've had my say. Let me get a few comments from you guys before I wrap this up, because trying to keep this short relatively. Let's see. Some emulation says denying their lived experiences. Careful, scribe. I'm not denying their lived experiences. I'm just denying that their lived experiences have to define my life. That's all. Functional, because I got one hand in my pocket and the other's holding a bag. Yeah, there's that too. Let's see. Alpha Omega. I love Lucky Charms. I never did I ever have Lucky Charms? I think I did once. I never really liked the marshmallow sweet cereals. It was always just Rice Krispies or Cheerios. No one nowhere. Bob Ross was quality with talent. This joke is tarded. I don't even know what this guy does elsewise. I don't know what his PhD is in. Maybe it's something meritorious. I don't know. And some emulation. You know, I'm bad. I'm bad. You know it. Shimon. Well, I can't think of a better place to end than that. So, guys, I hope you appreciated this little double feature. Short little run through different ideas and concepts. As with, I should say, as the quarantine goes, I'll probably end up doing more of these because I enjoy them and they're entertaining for me. And they break up the decided monotony of not leaving my apartment for extended periods of time. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you all are well and remain well. And I hope you all have a good Saturday. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your comments and participation. Thank you for your generosity here, now, and otherwise. I do appreciate it. And just a reminder for myself and Monkey and Satsu and any other content creator that you enjoy, share their stuff, retweet it, like it, post it onto Twitter or to Facebook or Instagram or MySpace or Napster, or whatever you like. YouTube is doing some funky things with its algorithm, as they always are. So the more often that you guys retransmit the things that you like and you think people should see, the better off it is for both the content creators and their audiences. So again, guys, have a good Saturday. Stay safe, stay well, and I will talk to you later. Take care.